Casino is better than Goodfellas. What's up, everybody? So, 30 years ago this week, Casino was released. And as I said in the intro, I believe it's a better movie overall than Goodfellas is. Now, Goodfellas had the impact that Casino did not. It was one of the first movies of its kind that brought the gangster movie down to a more ground level, because before that, the only gangster movie we can think of, even though I say it's not a gangster movie, is The Godfather. So it's the boss, the underboss, his advisors, and how they operate on that kind of high level. But with Goodfellas, it was the low level. Okay, here's the street guy that hopefully one of them will rise up the ranks to one day become boss. And the fact that it was a true story, all of that hit, as well as great performances by Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, etc. Now with Casino, I think it's a better cast. The performances are just top notch. I think it's one of De Niro's best performances, and I'll get into that. But I just like the grandness of it all and how it's still just kind of boiled down to these three main characters played by De Niro, Sharon Stone, and Pesci. Now, for those of you who have no idea what Casino is about, it's basically the rise and fall of the mafia's influence in Las Vegas and how they were just basically running things specifically in the 70s era, and then how it all kind of came crashing down. Now, let's talk about the technical aspects of it that I really, really love. And first, I got to give flowers to Mr. Robert Richardson, who did the lighting. And it's a very specific type of lighting that he does. I mean, there are moments where just one character is lit up very, very brightly, so you really have to kind of focus on them regardless of what's happening around them. You know, this happens a lot with De Niro and Pesci's character, that, okay, you really have to pay attention to them in this moment. And it's a really like artistic and obvious thing to do, but it just works. It doesn't seem like overkill. The second one is the editing. I mean, props to the legend herself, Thelma Schoonmaker Powell. I think she's the only editor that Scorsese has ever worked with his entire career, maybe with the exception of one or two in the very beginning. But they just have this amazing relationship. They always work together, and there's a great flow with all of their movies. And I think the hallmark of it, and then you do see this in Goodfellas as well, but specifically with Casino, because there's so much to cover, it's more of a world that they're trying to expose you to, not a specific story that they want you to follow. Is that even though it's 3 hours long, it feels like two, maybe even a little bit less. It's just so fast paced. And there's never a dull moment, even when you think it's a scene that's going to be boring, because maybe it's lasting a little longer than other scenes. It's still like just grips your attention. I'm thinking specifically of the scene where Joe Pesci's character shows up at De Niro's house and he wants to talk to the banker about getting his money back. And it's just the three of them, but the shots go from Joe Pesci's perspective to the banker's perspective to De Niro's perspective. And so right as you think, okay, but where is this going and everything, it cuts to different people to kind of see their reaction on what is happening. And so it just keeps going. And then, of course, there's the way Pesci takes that particular scene and how, he's just sounding like he's very logical, very reasonable. And then it takes a serious, almost violent turn. I mean, definitely threatens violence, but doesn't actually start off as that. But that's one of the longer scenes in the movie. Everything else is pretty, fast paced and, very quickly cut. Another thing I got to talk about is Sharon Stone. She, I'm going to say it right now, she steals the show. I mean, it is definitely her best performance. I think she got robbed at the Oscars. I mean, I never really saw, because Susan Sarandon won for her performance in a movie that I don't remember that she did with Sean Penn. But but I don't remember that movie. I don't remember. I just know that Susan Sarandon is an amazing actress, and okay, I can see her winning that. But Sharon Stone, the way she holds her own with De Niro and Pesci, it's one for the ages. It's definitely the best one of her career, and I definitely deserves mention. I mean, she's all of it. She's sweet, she's conniving, she's dramatic, she's over the edge, she's vulnerable, she's everything that you want in a iconic performance, which I believe this definitely was. And also, like as far as performances go, with Pesci, you've seen a performance like this if you saw Goodfellas, so it's not like out of the realm of what he's capable of, even though it's still great. I really, I'm going to talk about De Niro's performance here because when you think of De Niro, you think of these very heavy characters, that kind of take up the screen, even if it's Mean Streets or Raging Bull or even in Cape Fear, which I think came out before this one did. His performance as Sam Rothstein, it's so composed, it's almost stoic, and he's kind of have to hold this all together because in this movie he plays the guy that everyone is depending on. And so he's got so much on his shoulders and he has to carry it in a way that it doesn't seem like it's crumbling him on the inside. So he always has to hold his own from the outside perspective. But then you see little things where there's that particular scene where he's talking to Sharon Stone's character about how she's kind of taking his drugs because he has prescription for a really heavy prescription for this crazy ulcer apparently that he has. And it's like, oh, so it's that level where what you are doing is literally eating you up inside. And also, it's like, I love how he just is able to carry the type of suits that he wears. I think, there was a meme that showed all the different suits that he wears. And I think it's like upwards of 30 different suits. And it's just wild colors. Uh, but he just wears them with a serious look on his face. He really owns it, even though it's like, I think that's an apricot colored suit. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's definitely a reflection of the character that a real life character that he's playing. And so everything involved, just like I said, from beginning to end, it's top notch, 10 out of 10. And like I said, Scorsese's best gangster movie, no doubt. Anyways, what about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, give me a follow, and I'll see you guys next time.